A West Virginia reporter was arrested Tuesday at the state capitol after trying to ask Tom Price, the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, questions about the American Health Care Act. Dan Heyman of Charleston is a reporter with Public News Service and has been in the journalism industry for 30 years. He said he was at the Capitol to speak to Price about the effects of the legislation passed on May 4 by the U.S. House of Representatives. According to Heyman, Price, who became secretary on February 10, entered through the Capitol's West Wing. "I had been working on whether or not domestic violence is a pre-existing condition," he said. States who receive a waiver from the federal government would be allowed to create high-risk insurance pools for individuals with pre-existing conditions. Kellyanne Conway, counsel to President Donald Trump, was also with Price at the time. Heyman, who was using his cell phone as a recorder, said he reached out his arm and asked Price the question repeatedly with no answer. "At some point, I think, the Capitol Police decided I was too persistent in asking this question and trying to do my job, so they arrested me," he said. "I asked if I was under arrest, and they said yes. And I said, if I'm under arrest, how come I haven't had my Miranda rights read to me? They said, well, we're not asking you any questions right now." Heyman said he waited in an office while officers filed related paperwork. Upon completion, the officers told Heyman he had the right to remain silent. Heyman was charged in Kanawha County Magistrate Court with a misdemeanor of willful disruption of governmental processes. Heyman was aggressively breaching the Secret Service agents to the point where the agents were forced to remove him a couple times from the area walking up the hallway of the main building, the complaint said. The defendant was causing a disturbance by yelling questions at Ms. Conway and Secretary Price. The complaint cited state code regarding intimidating government officials at the Capitol. "If any person willfully interrupts or molests the orderly and peaceful process of any department, division, agency or branch of state government or of its political subdivisions, he or she is guilty of a misdemeanor," the code states. Those found guilty could be fined $100 and also be sentenced to 6 months in jail. Heyman was released Tuesday evening on a $5,000 bond, which his lawyer, Tim DiPiero, said was paid for by someone associated with Public News Service. "Normally, I would make no comment on a criminal case and recommend to my client that he make no comment," DiPiero said. "I've never had a client arrested for talking too loud or anything similar to that." Heyman was wearing the same white Public News Service polo shirt he was arrested in when he talked to reporters Tuesday evening. The preliminary hearing is scheduled within the next 20 days, according to DiPiero. American Civil Liberties Union of West Virginia also held a press conference Tuesday night outside of the state capitol on the matter. Jamie Lynn Crofts, the legal director of the organization, said freedom of the press should not be undermined. "We have a president that calls the media fake news, and resists transparency at every turn," she said. Today, a reporter was arrested for trying to ask a question to a member of the Trump administration. Crofts said Heyman was not being disruptive based on present information. "I have one thing to say to anyone who infringes on First Amendment rights. We'll see you in court," Crofts concluded. Heyman, who joined Public News Service in 2009, said he was just doing his job. "I am supposed to find out if somebody is going to be affected by this health care law," he said. Price took part in a press conference Tuesday afternoon after meeting with Governor Jim Justice and others about the state's opioid addiction problems. Conway, West Virginia Health and Human Resources Secretary Bill Crouch, U.S. Representative Evan Jenkins, R.W. Virginia, Recovery Point Executive Director Matt Boggs, and First Choice Health Systems Vice President and CFO Scott Jarrett joined Price at the media briefing. Dan Heyman, a reporter for Public News Service, said he was arrested at the West Virginia state capitol after trying to ask Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price a question about the House-passed health care bill to repeal and replace Obamacare. In a press conference held shortly after posting bail, Heyman said he asked Price repeatedly about whether domestic violence is considered a pre-existing condition under the new GOP health care bill. According to Heyman's account, he waited for Price to come into the building and then reached past those accompanying Price with his phone and repeatedly asked his health care questions, adding that a number of other reporters wanted to bring up the issue of pre-existing conditions. He said Capitol Police at some point decided I was just too persistent in asking this question and trying to do my job, and so they arrested me. According to the criminal complaint by the Capitol Police, Heyman was aggressively breaching the Secret Service agents to the point where the agents were forced to remove him a couple of times from the area walking up the hallway in the main building of the Capitol. The defendant was causing a disturbance at Miss Conway and Secretary Price. The officer who filed the report said he and another officer were able to detain the defendant before he tried aggressively to breach the security of the Secret Service. Heyman said he couldn't remember how many times he asked the question, but he added that it is his job to ask questions, expressing disbelief that he was arrested. "First time I've ever been arrested for asking a question. First time I've ever heard of someone getting arrested for asking a question," he said. Heyman said he asked his questions in a public space and received no warnings that he was in the wrong place or doing other activities to warrant his arrest. "No police officer told me you were in the wrong place," he said. "The police put hands on me, although they didn't hurt me, certainly," he added. Heyman asked them if he was under arrest, according to his version of events, and they said yes. He also said he told the police he was a member of the press. "The police didn't immediately read him his Miranda rights," he added, "because they said we're not asking him questions. It's dreadful. This is my job, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to find out if someone is going to be affected by this healthcare law. I think it is a question that deserves to be answered," he added. Heyman had to pay $5,000 bond and was charged with willful disruption of governmental processes, a misdemeanor. A reporter has been arrested by West Virginia State Capitol Police Tuesday after repeatedly asking a question to U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price. Dan Heyman, who works for Public News Service, said he repeatedly asked Price at the Capitol whether domestic violence is classed as a pre-existing condition under the health care bill recently passed in the House. Speaking at a press conference reported by The Hill, Heyman said he reached past Price's entourage with his phone and asked his question multiple times, until police decided I was just too persistent in asking this question and trying to do my job, and so they arrested me. First time I've ever been arrested for asking a question. First time I've ever heard of someone getting arrested for asking a question, he added. He asked the questions in a public space, Price said, and was not warned by police that anything he was doing could result in an arrest. "No police officer told me you were in the wrong place," he said. He said he told police as they arrested him that he is a member of the press. "It's dreadful. This is my job, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to find out if someone is going to be affected by this health care law. I think it is a question that deserves to be answered," Heyman said. Authorities charged Heyman with willful disruption of governmental processes, a misdemeanor, and he was released later on $5,000 bail. According to the Washington Post, authorities said Heyman was aggressively breaching the Secret Service agents to the point where they were forced to remove him a couple of times from the area, according to a criminal complaint. Heyman was causing a disturbance by yelling questions at Miss Conway and Secretary Price, the complaint stated. The American Civil Liberties Union of West Virginia said in a statement quoted by the Post that Heyman's arrest constituted a blatant attempt to chill an independent, free press. It called for the outrageous charges against Heyman be dropped immediately. This a dangerous time in our country, the statement read. Freedom of the press is being eroded every day. If it passes the Senate, the American Health Care Act would end some of the most unpopular elements of Obamacare, including the requirement that Americans either purchase health insurance or pay a fine to the IRS, and would preserve a few others, such as allowing children to remain on their parents' health insurance until age 26. It would dramatically reduce the subsidies available to help lower middle-class and lower-income Americans purchase insurance, and critics say it would effectively end the ban on discriminating against those with pre-existing conditions.